In this video, we're going to be talking about what I feel is one of the most important aspects when you're building your app, and that is the layout of the app. After all, when people use your app, they want to interact with a beautiful app where everything is aligned exactly where it needs to be. And that's very, very easy to use. Now, with this video, we are starting a brand new series, and that is the fundamentals of Flutter. So every new video is going to talk about a specific aspect of Flutter that you need to master, that you need to know really well in order to build a successful app. So definitely stay tuned for more videos in this series. Now, if you Google for something like Flutter layouts or layouts in Flutter, chances are you're going to be redirected on a page such as this one, okay? And if you scroll down, you're going to see a diagram like this. And this is a very, very important diagram because one of the things about Flutter is that all the layouts, how things are displayed, how things are rendered on the screen, are done using widgets. Okay, so as you can see, you have a container widget. A container widget has a child, a row widget, and that row widget has multiple children. Okay, so not just one child, multiple children. In this case, these are various columns, and then a column has multiple children. In this case, it has two children. This column in particular has an icon container, and then the container in turn has a text child. Okay, so and so on and so forth. So we started from this big container that has one row. That row has three columns, and then each column has a bunch of things such as an icon and then a container and text. And so if you scroll down, you're going to see that you can pretty much design any kind of layout, whether it's a very simple layout or a very complex layout, using this methodology, right? Using this system. So they give you a couple of examples, and this is very, very important. Okay, you need to internalize how the layout system works, right? So here we have a layout here, and we kind of have, two main elements, right? We have this element here and this element. We have an image, and then we have this thing. And so this thing here is one row, right? This thing here is one row. That row has two children. Okay, it says here row. And then inside the children, we have multiple things. In this case, we only have one thing, which is an image. But in this case, we have a column that has a bunch of other children. And the reason we have a column is going to be evident a little bit later in the video. But the short answer is that inside a column, we can arrange children in kind of this top-down fashion. Whereas inside a row, it's going to be horizontally, right? So something from left to right, whereas inside of a column, it's going to be from top to bottom. So that's very important. So if you scroll a little bit lower, you're going to see, okay, now we have this column here. This is this left column. And then you can go deeper. You can see that these elements are aligned top to bottom. So these are inside of a column. Okay, so we have element 1, element 2, element 3, and this is a row, because in this case, this has multiple elements and they are arranged horizontally, right? So this needs to be a row. This is also a row with 3 elements, but each of these elements has a column because these elements need to be aligned top to bottom, right? In kind of this vertical fashion, okay? So that is very, very important to understand. And we're going to be talking a lot more about this. We're going to be talking about different things that you can do with it. Lots and lots of things, but the objective of this video here is to help you guys take a layout and instantly transform it into something that you can code using Flutter. So hopefully by the end of the video, you will be able to do that. Now let's jump into our code and let me show you some hands-on examples. So here I started a brand new Flutter project. And if you watched one of my previous videos on setting up an environment, you will know that you can use a tool such as Visual Studio Code. And once you install the Flutter runtime, you will be able to press Command-Shift-P, and then you're going to have an option on new project, or you can simply type Flutter and you can see all the little Flutter commands that you can do. So I basically said new project. After you see this menu, you can simply click on this and you want to pick application. Once you click on this, you're going to be given a choice of where you want to store that application. And once you select the folder, it's going to go out and it's going to create a sample app. It's going to be a sample app that is built in with Flutter. This is kind of a little tutorial app that you can modify and kind of look at in order to get started with Flutter. And so this is what the app looks like. This is that simple app where we can click on this button and it's going to be changing this number here. It's going to be changing the state. And if you look inside this app, you're going to see this My App main widget. And this My App widget returns a material app. And a material app has a home section that is connected to this My homepage. Okay, right here. And if you scroll down to My homepage, you're going to see kind of like the main part of the app. Now, if you take a look at this app, you're going to see a body section, then you have center, and then you have column, and then you have various children in that column. And so what this means is that if you have a column and you have children, you're going to be arranging elements vertically, right? So like from top to bottom. And so if you run this app, you will see that what you're seeing is just one element, okay? And that is because we only have one child, right? So we have this children inside a column. This column is this column's children. And in this case, we only have a text. Now, if we go ahead and add another text right here, that text is going to be displayed right below that initial text that we had here. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to create a new text right here. I'm just going to say text, and I'm going to say hello world, second element. Okay. That's what I'm going to do. And it's telling me I need a const modifier. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to resave it, which is going to reload the app. And now we're seeing two elements. Now, another thing that I can do is I can create a row inside the column. So instead of having this, one text element, I can create a row, and inside the row, I can have multiple elements. And what that's going to do is that's going to allow me to arrange my elements inside the row as in a horizontal fashion. Okay. So they're not going to be vertically. I mean, it's still going to be vertically, but inside one of these elements, these levels here, I will be able to arrange it in a horizontal fashion. So let me show you how that works. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a row here, and inside the row, I'm going to have children. And then for the children, I'm going to have multiple widgets. So maybe I'll have a text. And so this is going to be text one inside row. Okay, something like this. Okay, and it's telling me I need a const modifier. Just going to make it happy. Okay. So we're going to reload this app, and now we have this text inside the row. Okay, so all the children that are going to be here as part of this row, they're going to be arranged horizontally now. Okay, they're not going to be arranged vertically. So let me show you how to do that. So I have this one child. I'm going to add another child, another text. I'm going to say text two and, another child. Okay, or text two inside row. Okay, so I'm going to reload my app. And so there you go. So now you have that first text element and this second text element right here. And that is because they're inside the row. Now, as you can see, this row, all the stuff inside the row is kind of left justified. What if you want to change that around? What if you want to center justify it, or you want to maybe space it out or something like this? Well, fortunately, you can do that as well. What you want to do is you want to set a parameter on the row, right? So we have this row, and what I can do is I can type something called max main axis alignment. I can also do main axis size. So let's go ahead and do that, and then I'll explain to you what it means. So we're going to do main axis alignment, and I'm going to say main axis alignment center. Okay. And that's a parameter on the row level. And essentially what that's going to do is that's going to center the element. So I just resave the app, and now we have this row, and now it's centered. Okay. Another thing that you can do is you can do space evenly. Okay. There's a couple of other parameters, but space evenly is one. And if you reload the app, you will see that now it's kind of spacing evenly. So they're not kind of bunched in together. They're kind of one is here, one is here. So that's a nice kind of layout. Very, very easy way to create a layout. Obviously, I can also have it at the end, right? I can have it in the start, which is the default. I can have it on the right-hand side. And now, as you can see, it's on the right-hand side. And obviously, this setting is going to be applicable to all the elements, not just text elements. I can have images, or I can have buttons or icons, etc., etc. That is going to be the way you align. Now, let's quickly talk about this setting right here, this main axis alignment. So alignment is kind of self-explanatory, but what exactly is a main axis? Well, a main axis of a layout widget is the way that the widget aligns the elements. So for row, the main axis is going to be horizontal. For column, the main axis is going to be vertical. There's also something called a cross axis, right? So if I type a cross axis, that is the opposite. So for row, cross axis is going to be vertical, whereas for column, cross axis is going to be horizontal. And you can also align it various ways. You can do something like a baseline, center, and you can stretch them out, things like that. So that gives you another way of aligning how the row is fit, for instance, inside a column or inside of a parent element, okay? You can kind of specify that. Now, of course, I can keep going. I can create a column inside of this row and then put elements inside that column. And these elements are going to be fitted into that space inside the row, but those specific elements inside of that column are going to be, in the top-down fashion. So let me quickly show you how to do that. So we have these two elements. I'm going to add another one, and I'm going to say column, and then I'm going to say children. Okay, and then I'm going to say children. And let's say inside the column, we're going to have two of these, or let's say three of these. Okay, and these are going to be obviously aligned in a top-down fashion. Okay, so I'm going to say 1, 2, 3 inside column right here, and we're gonna do that. We're gonna add those constant modifiers here so it doesn't complain. All right, perfect. Okay, so let's go ahead and save that now. Let's see how that looks, and there you have it. So we have a row with this text, and then we have a column with three children inside that specific column, and now these are arranged top-down fashion here. Okay, so this right here is the most basic but also the most important part of Flutter layouts, is that you have to understand that it's all kind of children, right? It's like those Russian dolls, right, where you have one inside the other, inside the other, inside the other. It's kind of the same thing, kind of the same mentality. Now, as you're developing your app and you're using a tool such as Visual Studio Code, you're also going to have this widget inspector, and this is going to be super, super useful with pretty much any app, but especially if you are, learning how to do layouts, because you're seeing the whole widget tree right in front of you. So, anytime I run this app, I'm seeing this widget tree, right? I'm seeing the root, the my app, the material app, scaffolding, center, column, and I'm seeing this one column, and then I'm seeing the rows, and I can actually click on it, and I can get more details, right? I can get more details into how they're structured. I can scroll, and I can see. So I can click on this row, and I can see all my elements, right? I can see this text elements, I can see the row element, and there's a lot of information there. There's a lot of stuff there, and we're going to get to that in just a second. But right now, you can kind of see, you see the main axis, you see the cross axis, you see how they are spaced. So spaced evenly, spaced around, we can center it. We can have a really nice preview of what our widgets are doing as we're developing. This is an amazing tool. So keep that in mind. Now, columns and rows are the fundamental building blocks of your Flutter app, but they're not the only elements. There's a lot of other ways of aligning different widgets on the screens. One important way of doing it is by using a stack, and a stack allows you to put one widget on top of another. So whereas a column or a row, they kind of space things out, space those widgets out, right? They have a certain layout. A stack allows you to put one widget, position it maybe on top of another widget or maybe slightly off another widget, and that allows you to create very intricate and complicated layout. So here I created a very simple stack widget. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to remove all the widgets. I'm just going to keep the body, and I'm going to put my stack example right there. Let's add a const modifier, and let's go ahead and reload this. And now what you're seeing is a stack, right? And this stack has two squares in it. Okay, in this case, as you can see, they're overlapping. Okay, you can't do something like this with columns. You can't do something like this with rows. In this example, you have to use a stack. And let me show you how this works. So this is our stack example. It's a stateless widget, just a regular widget, doesn't have any state or anything like that. And what we're doing is we're returning a stack. Now that stack has children, right? Stacks can have children just like rows and columns. But the main difference is that unlike rows and columns, you have to position them explicitly. So what we're doing is we're using a positioned widget to position a certain element explicitly. So we're saying, off left 10, top 10, This is going to be this red one, and then 50/50 is going to be the blue one. So if you take a look at this one, you see how the red one is like really close. It's only 10 pixels away from kind of our main stack widget. And then the blue one is 50 pixels away, because if I change this, right, if I say 0, 0, and I reload it, it's going to be flush with our canvas, right? So as you can see, it's flush. And that is because all of this is a stack, right? All of this is a stack. And so we can do something like 2020. It's going to give it a little bit more room now. Okay, so now it's 2020, and this one remains the same. And so what's happening is that we created a stack, and inside the stack we have two children. Okay, and these and then we specify, and then for each child we specify an explicit positioning, and the actual boxes are just containers. They're just containers with a color, right? So we can make this container bigger, and now they're going to be a little bit bigger by 200 and 200 pixels. Another layout widget I want to show you is a wrap. Okay, so here I have a wrap example. This is also just a basic stateless widget. And let's go ahead and remove our stack example, and let's put a wrap example right there. And now if we reload the app, you're going to see something else. So now we have elements here. And if we do this, they're going to wrap, right? It allows them to wrap. And so if these elements were in a container that was smaller than all of this, they would automatically wrap. So like, let's say we had a row, and inside the row we had a container that was maybe narrower than this whole thing, right? Not as wide. They would automatically wrap. And the reason this works is that we have this wrap example. This is a stateless widget. We have a list. We have an array of strings, right? We have a list of strings, items, item 1, etc. And then what we're doing is we are wrapping these individual items here inside a wrap. Okay, we're using something called a chip widget to kind of have this little nice layout, but you can use any widget that you want. But essentially we have them inside a wrap. And then inside the wrap, we're just saying, okay, what is the spacing, right? This is the gap between adjacent chips, and this is the gap between the lines. So if I, make this 20, the gap increases. And then if I come in here and I want to have maybe a bigger gap between adjacent lines, I can come in here and I can put 50, 40 or something. And now I'm going to have a gap here. So this is a layout that you can use anytime you want to display just multiple things. This could be useful in UIs if you want to display, multiple things that the user chose, different options or something, using these chips right here. Really, really good example. But essentially, it's kind of a very free-flowing layout, if you will, that allows you to just list items, and they're going to automatically wrap if they do not fit, or if it's a person resizes the window, or it's a reactive situation, or maybe if they view the app on a different device, on a narrower screen, from a desktop to a tablet, things like that. Now, it's also important to understand something called constraints. And if you head over to Flutter's documentation, you're going to be on the page that kind of tells you a little bit about constraints. So what they say is, constraints go down, sizes go up, parent sets position. And so what that essentially means, kind of in layman's terms, is that if you are doing layouts, okay, so let's say you have maybe a row, and then inside the row you have a container, and inside the container you have something else. You're going to have situations where, if you want to have maybe your child, the element is going to be able to set its own width. And in some cases, it may set a width that's longer than what the parent told it to set. And in that case, you're going to have something called an overflow. So they give you a ton of examples here. I believe it's something like 30 examples here, but don't spend your time going over this. Just keep in the back of your mind that when you're creating these layouts, there's going to be situations where, maybe your child wants to set a really big layout and the parent is constraining it. So just keep that in the back of your mind. And as you're, gaining experience building apps, you're going to see issues come up here and there, and you're going to know how to solve them. Now, you can definitely take a look at all of these examples. You can quickly scan through them just to kind of get a bigger picture of how these constraints work. But let me give you my own example so that you understand exactly what kind of issues you can have when you're building apps if you do not understand how constraints work. So here I have a very, very simple layout, okay, inside of my main app. I have a container, and I gave that container a width of 10,000. I also gave it a red color, and I created child inside of it, where this is going to be a text widget, and I just, created some text here. Now, if we run this, you're going to see this container. This is this container, this narrow container. And the problem here is you can see you're seeing this right here. This means that your widget is overflowing. And the reason it's overflowing is because we gave the container a very, very big width parameter. So it's much longer than my device can support. My device cannot support 10,000 pixels. But if we, let's say, make it 500 as the width, now it's not overflowing anymore. Okay, now it's 500 pixels. And this is fine here. We can also make it smaller, and we can also give it a height. We can say height 100, maybe this is 5. Okay, and now that's kind of what we have here. Now, if we would have made this text bigger than this container, remember this container has explicit width, then the text, it would overflow in this case, because the text would not even fit inside this container. We would need to do something else. And so anytime you're seeing those lines, those yellow and black lines, just understand that you did something wrong, and you should double check your parameters there. So if you have something like this, you see this is overflowing, and it's also telling you that the right overflowed by like 48,510 pixels. So if you put something like, I don't know, 1,000 is fine. How about 5,000? Okay, it's telling us it overflowed by 3,510 pixels. Okay, and so it's even telling how many pixels it overflowed by, which is going to be very useful when you're debugging your app, just to see, how many pixels you need to remove so that everything fits perfectly. Another important thing you have to keep in mind is that you're going to have situations where maybe you're creating a row, or you're creating a column, or you're creating just about anything, but whatever you're trying to load there is just too big and it doesn't quite line up correctly. So here I have the same app, and we have the row that we created earlier, but in this case we have children, and we have 3 children. And what I'm doing is I'm just displaying a random image from Wikipedia, and I'm using image.network, which is a way for me to load an image remotely. And this is what the app looks like. And in this case, the image is just too big and it doesn't fit inside the row. And as a result, we don't see all the 3 images. We see one image here, and then we're seeing a part of an image, and then we're seeing that overflowing. It's telling us right overflowed by 1728 pixels. Okay, and so in this case, what we need to do is we need to have Flutter display them so that they all fit inside the row. So it figures out the optimal size for these images so that we can display them inside the row. Unfortunately, Flutter has a nice way of doing that. And so what you need to do is you need to wrap this widget that you're trying to display, the widget that's overflowing, inside of another widget called expanded. You can simply right click on it, and you can go into refactor, and you can say wrap with widget, and we're going to say expanded. Okay, and you can do the same thing here, and you can right click here, refactor, wrap with widget, expanded, and then list, and then this one is factor, wrap with widget. And now if you reload the app, it displays it perfectly, because this allows us to have the widget in question, the widget that we're trying to display, in this case it's an image, to take up exactly as much space as it needs and not more or less. And so if we were to display 2 of these inside the row, then they would just make them a little bit bigger so that they are displaying perfectly. Let's go ahead and try that. So I'm going to remove one of these here, and I'm going to reload the app. And now they're displayed perfectly. Okay. If you like, you can also add a flex parameter inside of expanded. And what that's going to do is that's going to make the image bigger by a certain factor. In this case, by a factor of 2. So let's go ahead and reload the app. And now, as you can see, this became smaller and this became bigger. So this is twice what it was, right? You can make it a factor of 3 if you like. We can reload that. And now you have it. This is at 3 times, taking up 3 times this image's space. And you can keep going depending on your situation. And in fact, expanded and flex can be very, very useful when you're creating anything from very, very simple UIs to very, very complicated UIs. One thought that comes to mind immediately is a situation where you might have like a left kind of toolbar, maybe some icons here, and then a canvas right here. maybe something like a Photoshop or like a drawing app or like an IDE or something like that. And in this case, you're going to have one big canvas. You might have a row, and then inside of the row, you might have the first element just be normal, and then the second element can have an expanded flex of, let's say, 4 or something like that, or 3. If it's 3, obviously it's going to take 2/3. This is going to be 1/3. If it's 4, it's going to take 3/4, and this is going to be 1/4, right? So you guys get the picture. Now, of course, you have many other widgets that you can use to kind of position your elements on the screen. One quick example is a list view that allows you to position various widgets in kind of a list fashion and do various operations on them. And that's used in situations whenever you need to have a list of items and you need to do something inside of that list. But there are many other widgets, there are many other ways of aligning things. And that is something you're going to discover as you start building apps, as you start coding more. But right now, having this foundation is enough to get started and to start gaining valuable experience. And then later on, as you're building more and more complex apps and you're adding more and more complex widgets, and you're going to learn about more complex layouts when the time comes. And so I really hope you enjoyed this introduction to Flutter layouts. If you did, I would appreciate a comment, a like, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Don't forget, this is just the first video in a long series of fundamental Flutter concepts that you must master in order to build successful apps. So definitely subscribe to this channel so you do not miss future videos. Thanks a lot for watching, and I'll talk to you in the next one.